This meeting is being recorded.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, for joining. I want to introduce Sam Prieto and from Brainstorm that's here today to be able to share his deep knowledge and understanding of interviewing fundamentals. Welcome, Sam, and looking forward to everything that you're able to share today. And as always, if there's ever any questions or anything, feel free to reach out to us, connect with us. And if you're not currently within the program, reach out to us if you have any interests. So with that, feel free to go ahead and get started, Sam, and turn it over to you.
All right. Thank you so much, Trina. First of all, it's really a pleasure to be here with you guys. Again, I'm a huge fan of Tech Moms and what you guys are set out to do. Just phenomenal to see that there are people who really care and really want to make a difference. I think all of us, we're all a product of people who just at some point or in many moments in our lives were willing to help and help us grow. So this is great, phenomenal initiative. And just wanted to kind of just set the expectations here, to everyone who's watching us. Please, participation will be awesome to have everyone participate. So feel free to ask questions, interrupt at any given moment. We will have Q&A at the end, but if it's something pertaining to what we're talking about, please add any comments or experiences that you've had, or even questions that you think you've had in the past and you didn't know how to approach a specific challenge. All right, so yeah, let's get started. First of all, I want to just I saw this little quote or this message, and I thought it was funny. I mean, who would have thought that cauliflower could ever become a pizza, right? And so I think that as humans, many times we forget how amazing we are, and the potential. Really, we can, if we have our mind set, we can do anything. And so I just want to recognize our audience here of the amazing things you've done thus far, and really there's nothing that can stop you if you believe in yourself. And so I just wanted to I think that's very important for us to always remind ourselves of our potential and also the things that we've achieved and overcome. And I think that builds so that we have the confidence to do whatever we were set to do. All right, so I will mainly talk about three things: the purpose of interviews, why do they exist, what they are, and then how do we prepare for them, and then the execution, right? That's what ultimately we want to perform. We want to be able to present our best versions, and so I think that, and then we'll wrap up with questions. All right, so why? Why do I think there's a lot of misunderstanding and misconcept of uh, uh, why do companies have interviews and the system, and I think it's questionable of best practices of not just from the candidate side, but also from an employer side. And here at Brainstorm, we try to really create a great experience, and I think that for the candidate and also for all involved. And I think that's something that we also as candidates, we want to be aware of, um, um, the intention of the company as they're trying to uh, give us an experiencing that process and how to go about with that. So let's talk about what it is and what it's not, and also we'll talk about just remind ourselves that on the other side of the table, as candidates, there are people. The interviewers are also people. So we'll talk about that as well. All right, so let's start with what it's not. So an interview is not to disqualify people. I've heard, and I get from a lot of people, like, oh, they just want to see my flaws. They want to rule me out. And I think that mindset, it's important to have a shift on that mindset. The company is didn't invite us to then disqualify us, right? If they call the candidate, is because they are interested in getting to know more about the candidate, regardless of the level of the step of the process they're in. And so it's important to know that, right? They are interested, right? Until they get to know more about the candidate, and really they are not getting to a interview saying, okay, what's wrong here with this candidate, right? I need to disqualify this candidate. No, rather they really want to do their job, and their job, if they're in recruiting, if they're a hiring manager, they just want to get a great person that will be able to solve the problems and tackle the challenges that they have, right? Because it's a real, if there's a job posting, if there's a job opening, then they have problems, they have challenges that they need to get solved. It's not a therapy session. And it may be, maybe even ridiculous that I would bring this up, but sometimes we forget the setting we're in, and obviously we want to be able to connect with people and be open, but there is appropriate level and extent of how much we share and how deep we go. And sometimes people can start to talk about their problems, and it's not the right moment for that, right? Perhaps later on, if the candidate gets hired, and obviously there will be a relationship that will be built, etc. But at that moment, for that 15 minutes or 30 minutes, an hour, whatever it is, right? The candidate, needs to be reminded to stay focused on what's at task. And so let's not let's try to remind ourselves that that our problems and issues there for another moment. It's not to make people feel bad about themselves either. uh, Recruiters and hiring managers, or colleagues that are in the team, in the interview panel, they are not your enemy. Everyone, they are trying just to do their job, and to do their best ability. And so it's important to just remember that they are humans, they are people, and they didn't call the candidate, they didn't invite the candidate either on a remote call or video call or in person just to have them feel bad about themselves, right? And so, for what it's worth, everyone is thinking highly of you, and they just want to get to know you more. And so, again, I think these are perhaps seem obvious, but they are important mindset that when we come into a interview, if we are remind ourselves of that, then I think that helps us as we with the experience. Um, it's also not to waste anyone's time and resources, right? And so, again, the company, everyone, if you have four people on an interview plus the candidate, that's five people that precious time is being invested. And so it's important to know and to remind yourself, everyone is trying to do their very best, and being sensitive. And so if you were invited, to that moment, to that interview, then they're trying to make the best out of that 30 minutes or 20 minutes. And also it's important for us to be mindful of the time as well, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. Also, it's not personal. I think that's something that happens quite a bit. If when people get uh, rejected, if for whatever reason they don't, the company doesn't move forward with them in the process, a lot of people tend to think that it's personal. And from my experience, everyone is just trying to do their very best, and so it's really professional. It could be just because there was a set of skills that it was expected to be found in a candidate, or a knowledge or time of experience or whatever it is, right? And that varies from company to company, to role, but it almost never it's personal. It's always professional. People are trying to just understand, if the company can provide a great experience for the whoever will be hired, and just as much as the person who will be hired, they can also solve the problems and the challenges. And last but not least, it's not also an opportunity for the company to dig what's under the carpet, right? So it's not what lies beneath, right? It's nothing, they're not trying to find out what you're, hiding, or, it's really just a moment to get to know each other. Okay, so we've talked about what an interview is not. So let's talk about what it is then. First and foremost, it's a huge door of unlimited opportunities, and I mean it. Um, Even if candidates don't get the job, we can never measure the effects of being participating in the process. First, you get to meet people, and people really are the best resources this planet has, right? And so as we um, widen our network, and genuinely care about people and get to know them, you just never know. I have lots of stories of either friends, colleagues, who got a job because of they participated in a process, and they didn't get the job that they were hoping at that time, but later on things worked out. And so, and even within the same company, right? Perhaps at that time, in that moment, might have not worked, but later on the company, here at Brainstorm, we have experiences of people who interviewed previously, and then later on they got hired. So just keep that in mind. Even if the candidate gets a no, at the moment that they wish they wouldn't, it's not a no forever, and you never know the side effects and consequences of those interactions. It's a first impression as well, right? And that's very important. At every moment that we're interacting with the company, um, it's in the first impression. So if it's via text, if it's via email, if it's over the phone, if it's then in person or virtually, you have a lot of first impressions. I don't think there's only just one first impression, but every first impression is important, right? And so I think that's important to keep that in mind. You get to meet different people within the company, and so you have those experiences, as well as it is for the company as well to have a first impression on you. And so just as much. Okay, so next, it's an assessment of good character, right? That is so important. Every company, they have their different set of values, and what they like to find in people, and so that they can add to the culture, to the company. And I think it's important to uh, for us to also know that they're assessing that as well. And so um, just be mindful that throughout the process, it's a skills, knowledge, and experience analysis, right? Again, it's not personal. The company and the interview panel and the recruiter or the hiring manager, they're just trying to understand if the candidate has the skills that they need to succeed in the role. Do they have the knowledge, and whatever experience may be needed? And so um, later on, we're going to talk about the job post and how you prepare yourself for that. But just keep that in mind, that that's one of the focuses throughout the interview. And last, it's your opportunity to interview just as much. I think this is also a key component here, right? Um, a lot of times, the focus is, oh, they're interviewing me. The company is interviewing me. They want to get to know me. Well, it's also the candidate, right? It has to be the perfect match, right? The company needs to be selective just as much as the candidate needs to be selective. And so everything, just as much as there are first impressions, as we mentioned, the candidate is also, evaluating the company and the people that work in there, work at the company. So I think that's important to keep that in mind. Just try to be mindful and be aware of all the interactions that you have, and you make your own assessment and your own evaluation about that as well. Okay, interviews, it's by people for people. I think that's important. As I mentioned previously, recruiters, hiring managers, and the company, they're not your enemies, right? They're interested in you, right? And so, it's not them versus me, them versus us. We're all people. And I think we need, at the end of the day, everyone goes home to whatever that home looks like. Everyone has human challenges, and and needs, right? And so I think it's important to look at the interviewers just as humans, right? And so that way it will help you, I think, in a lot of ways. One is, if you're nervous, you can just remember that it's just Sam, or it's just Joe or Joanna, whoever it is, and they're just trying to get to know me, right? And so we don't need to be scared of the people on the other side of the table. All right. Now, preparation. I know sometimes people can feel overwhelmed with preparation. So I think if you're intentional, if you are organized and prioritize, and have a game plan, if you have a strategy, that can help so you feel more prepared. I like this quote a lot, and I'm sure all of you have seen it before. Luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity, right? And so a lot of times people say, "Hey, good luck," but really, it's all about if you do your homework, if you are well prepared, then if it's supposed to be, then the opportunity will come. All right, so I just I'm going to share here just a few ideas of uh, what to prepare for. There are many more techniques and other things to research about, but I think these are some of the main ones. So first of all, analyze the job post. You'd be surprised how many candidates they come to an interview and they really haven't looked at the job post. It's and that sometimes cause a little bit of frustration, because then the questions that they ask or the way how they answer the questions that are asked are not aligned with the job post and with the need of the company. And so if that happens, you miss a lot of opportunities to really present your skills and your knowledge and your experience. So I highly recommend, first and foremost, even before you apply, I know we're talking about interviews here, but even before you apply, take the time to look at a job post. Sometimes there are questions during the application that if you take the time to analyze the job post, it will help you to draft a more compelling answer that represents your skills and knowledge. Also, by really going through the job post, you prepare for questions on both ends. So what I mean by that is, perhaps I can prepare myself to see what kind of questions the company will ask based on the requirements and the challenge and the opportunity, whatever the company shared on the job post. That it can be an indication of what might be discussed on the interview. Um, Trina, I see that we are having some comments here, but so feel free if I don't want to ignore any questions or comments that people are making here. Okay.
Well, I'm glad you took a pause. I think there was a couple that we were going to leave for later, but I think you're addressing some of the ones I saw in there as far as questions, like how to prepare. So I'm going to hold on to those for a moment. We'll come back to see if we still have questions there.
Sounds great. Thank you. All righty then. So we talked about the questions that may come up during the interview process, but also questions that the candidate may ask, right? So again, the job post has a lot of information. And so by really going through thoroughly on it, you'll be able to be better prepared for questions that you may be asked. And also, you can ask specific questions that are along the lines of perhaps a potential challenge that the company is facing, specifically related to that role. Okay, study about the company. Also, it's quite surprising. A lot of people, they don't do their homework of learning about the company. I get that a lot of companies, they're not as popular, as well known as others. Nevertheless, if you applied or if the company even reached out to you, it's important to do your homework. It's important for you to do your research. And so obviously, I think the first source to learn about the company is from the company's website. So go, to all the different pages, not just about us, not just the career page, but also try to understand the service or the product, what's the business of the company. Having broader knowledge and understanding of the company will help you as well to understand the business. And then as you are having those interactions and experiences throughout the interview, you have a broader knowledge and picture of the company, and that helps you also tailor your answers. LinkedIn is also a great resource. Glassdoor, both you have users, you have just individuals who are also posting and mentioning, sharing their comments or their experience. Glassdoor is a great resource for you to even not only to learn more about the company, but also the people, the employees, the leadership, even the interview experiences, what to expect, what went well, what didn't. Take with a grain of salt some comments, especially people who are extremely negative. Usually, sometimes they took it too personal. And so it's important for you to also take a look at it for what it's worth. But it's a great resource for insights. Google is a great tool. As we know, we Google everything. What I recommend is, when you are Googling about the company, there's also the tab within Google where you usually we go images. There's also the news, right? And so depending on how big the company is, there will be articles, news articles, or will be, investments or updates on the company. And so it's important so that you are up to date with anything that's relevant and recent about the company. Okay, research the interviewers. It's great for you to know who you're going to meet, and even if to learn their names beforehand, and their roles, so that then what how they're coming into the interview, and everyone has a different job to fulfill. And so even if it's a hiring manager, if it's a recruiter, if it's a team member, they're going to look at the candidate differently from where they sit. And so it's important to have that understanding of the separation of roles and their names. And then remember, again, they're people. So treat them as such. Treat them as humans. Treat them as they also have their needs. They might be having a bad day. They might be. So we want to be mindful of that as well. Practice. I think Robin, this week, she yesterday or 2 days ago, she posted on LinkedIn about practicing with a couple of people, helping them mocking for an interview. And that is great. I think that's something that we should all, prepare ourselves before we go to an interview, especially, the ones who haven't had much of experience recently. It's always good to just get the words out, to feel more comfortable with the words and the answers and the questions that you may be asked. And so that, I think preparation can never be enough. Okay, so we've talked about all potential questions. We'll also talk about we'll discuss some questions here later on. And then CAR method. There are some different methods out there. There's the STAR. I like the CAR. It's one less letter. It's one less step. But so the CAR method is context or circumstance, action, and result. So what I like with this method is it helps us to be concise with our answers and our comments. A lot of times, on an interview, we'll ask a question, and some candidates will take, kid you not, 5-10 minutes to answer a question. And that's, and if you're on a screening call that's only 15 minutes, well, that already took the whole call. If it's 20, 30 minutes or an hour, even so, if you think about it, if you take about 5 to 10 minutes for each question, then you're really only going to answer a few questions. And so then you lose the opportunity to present more about you and cover other areas of your experience, or even, to get to know more about the company. So remember, CAR, it's context. So you're going to share, what was the circumstance, what was the issue, what was the challenge, and then the action. What action did I or the team take or took, and then the result. So I think we can use that method just about to any question. And obviously, if they ask, where were you born or whatever it is, and which actually it's not, not supposed to, but if they were to ask you a question that it doesn't apply, then you just go and straight and answer that. But usually, if it's behavioral questions, if it's tell me a time when you've had this experience or whatever, just it's so easy for us as humans to get lost in the details, and so it's important for us to be concise there. If the company or if the interviewer they want to dive in a little bit deeper, they will ask follow-up question, and then that will be appropriate for you to then answer. Okay, all right. So last, we'll talk about the logistics. So virtual interview and in person. There's a bit of different dynamics there. So let's talk about the virtual. So I'm gonna share a video. I don't know if you guys will be able to hear the sound, and that's okay. The sound is really not relevant, but I'm sure most of the world has seen this. So
scandals happen all the time. The question is, how do democracies respond to those scandals? And what will it mean for the wider region? I think one of your children has just walked in. I mean, shifting sands in the region. Do you think relations with the North may change? I would be surprised if they do. Pardon me. My apologies. What's this going to mean for the region? My apologies. South Korea's policy choices on North Korea have been severely limited in the last 6 months to a year.
Okay, so life happens, right? And I think COVID taught us that we're all humans, reminded us that we're humans, and things happen. I've had situations where I've had to interview from home, and while I was still having kids, and so it's important for everyone to be mindful of that. Now, having said that, if we can prepare so that we have the best experience possible for ourselves, even for the candidate, right? The candidate, it's so important for them to create an environment that will be distraction free, right? So that their mind can be entirely focused on that moment of the interview. Now, in hindsight, now we know what happened there with the professor. If that happens, I would say, if you can keep your calm. COVID, I think we've all had funny experiences, and so it's okay. It's not embarrassing. It's okay for you to just even ask, hey, I apologize, can you just give me a minute? And then you go and take care of if whatever the situation it is, and then you get back. And so it's okay. It's not the end of the world. That should never rule out any candidate because of that. And so, but as much as possible, try to schedule a time where you'll be if possible distraction free. Okay, date, time, and time zone. It seems it seems like that's a simple concept, but you'd be surprised how many people don't show up, or they miss because they didn't catch the time zone difference, or they didn't set a reminder, they forget. So I think it's important for everyone to double, triple check. Okay, so don't forget that. Time zone especially. And if for whatever reason something happens and you can't make it, just let the company know, even if it's going to be 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Like if you weren't able to show up for whatever reason, just notify them beforehand, and they'll try to reschedule. Test connection in advance and test everything. So different companies, there's so many, we're using Zoom right now, but there are so many different apps and software for us to connect nowadays. And so it's normal for us to sometimes, for the candidate to with a specific tool that a company uses. And so it's important for you to connect beforehand. Even, hours before, just to, if you maybe you have to install the software, right? And so if you leave it to the last minute, to the last 10, 15 minutes, that might not be time enough to download it, to create an account, and so forth, right? So if possible, you want to make sure that you feel comfortable that you've already tested everything, you've downloaded the software if necessary, you've tested your mic, you've tested the speakers, you've tested everything. It's always important to make sure that everything is working. And then I would say connect, if it's virtual, I would say connect, 10 minutes before, 5 minutes before. You can, you can even turn off the mic and mute it and not turn on the camera until a minute before or two, so that you're still doing something there, but you maintain the connection there and make sure, and then you feel more confident. Prepare the background and lighting. That is an important detail, because you want to make sure that the other side, they can see you well. There's enough lighting, and so it's a good experience for everyone. The background, it can be really your background, that's fine. If that also shows your your personality, that's great. I've seen some really fun and amazing backgrounds, and that's even a conversation started. So it's really cool. Okay, and then computer versus mobile. All right, so if possible, if you have a computer, I would always recommend to use a computer. Okay. The reason why is with mobile, it just gets a little bit tricky. Especially if you don't have a mount for it. Then I've had situations where the candidate they're holding the mobile, their phone on their hand, and I would get dizzy, and then it would be tough to maintain my focus as I was interacting with the candidate. And so it just doesn't flow as well, and the experience is not as positive, even for the candidate. Or sometimes you're cutting the half of your face, so you want to make sure, again, as you're testing everything. And then I think that computers provide more of a stable experience there for both ends. Okay, and yes, I also saw that someone mentioned on the comment there about the name of display. That's a great reminder there. Yeah, you want to make sure that it's your name, and so that it's easy to identify who it is. Okay, in-person interview. I think a lot of things, some of things. Yes, Trina.
I'm going to go back to a slide before. There was a couple questions I think that kind of got lost. I want to make sure we follow up on.
Okay.
One of them was sometimes they ask a question, or they'll connect to you directly and it won't be off a job description. That was somebody's question. I thought that was a really good opportunity to ask for the job description. Would you add anything else there? If people are recruiters are just reaching out directly, what should be considered or asked for when that occurs?
Okay, so you're saying that the recruiter, they hunted, they sourced the profile of their person, and so they're reaching out for the first time, right?
Yeah.
Yes, it's always important. You got to know, you need the information so you know what game you're playing, right? And so it's always important to just ask. You can show the excitement if you are, and just say, hey, this is awesome. Would you mind, where can I go? Or what's the title of the position, so I can look at the job post. And so it is important. And I think every company should have, a job post for every open vacancy. And so it is totally appropriate and strategic for you to ask for one.
All right, the next one, which I think is good, and it's a broad question, but I'm sure you have like maybe your top 3. When they ask, what questions do you have? What are the best questions to ask, and what are the worst? Like,
awesome.
3, so, like give us maybe 3 of each.
Yeah, I have a slide that we're going to cover questions, and so can we get that in a moment?
Yeah,
is that
absolutely.
Okay? Awesome. Okay, the three words, that's creative, and I didn't think of that, but we can definitely cover that. So awesome. Were there any other questions?
Let's see, there's just some comments about reaffirming to be concise, not rambling. I think that was a good comment. And then the time zone, I myself have run into that, so that was a great.
Who hasn't, right? Yeah,
I've done that. It was not good, and I did not get a call back. So yeah, I think just going over the logistics and reaching out again, and that way they know who you're, like, oh, I'm just reconfirming our time. Is this the right? I would do that every single time, just because I've personally had that happen. It sounds like other people have as well.
Yeah, even if an invite was made over the phone, you want to make sure that you get an email so that you can reach out and just say, hey, I'd like to confirm, is it this time, this date, and the time
Right.
zone, right? I think that's sometimes things happen over the phone, but best practice is to then have everything in writing so that then everyone uh, is they're on the same page. So
Great. Okay. Thank you.
okay,
Yep.
all right, thank you, Trina. All right, okay, so yeah, again, if it's an in-person interview, you want to make sure that the date, time, and address. Sometimes with even the technology that we have, addresses don't work, or the software will, we can't rely 100%. So you want to make sure that you do your research before to make sure that the software, the technology will get you there. Try to get acquainted with even if it's virtually with the area, and and then plan for the unexpected. When you're planning to get there, if it's going to be in person, anything can happen. A car accident, right? Oh, I've gone, the highway. I know how long it takes to get there. You never, we can't forget to factor in the unexpected, right? So accidents may happen. It may be snowing. You might get, unfortunately, a flat tire, whatever it is, right? And so you want to make sure that you plan beforehand, ahead of time. Make sure that you have enough time. It's better for you to arrive and stay in your car if you need, longer, and then just come in about 10 minutes before the interview, then have you be late, right? A minute late, or, for me personally, I think if I'm not there at least 5 minutes before, I'm already late. And so it's important to kind of plan ahead and then follow instructions providing the invite. So especially during COVID, right? A lot of companies, they have their own internal policies and their safety guidelines, and that's very important for you to pay attention to. And so you want to make sure that you go through thoroughly the instructions, and just make sure that that you follow through. If you are in an interview and you feel comfortable without the mask, and the company has let know that it's okay to remove the mask, then feel free if you want to. Really, at the end of the day, you have to, I believe, follow the guidelines of the company and also feel safe, right? And so if you feel safe, then Okay. All right. So we're getting to the last part of our presentation here. And so we're going to talk about, and this is where we're going to cover about questions, best questions to ask, and, also questions that you may be asked. I just want to remember that you got to be your best, right? Everyone, all of us, we have stories to tell, right? All of us, we have so many challenges that we've overcome in life. And so there's so much to share. There's so much to to show the world what we're capable of. Obviously, always with the car method, you want to be concise, but you want to make sure that this is the opportunity where you shine. This is the opportunity where you show the world, you show the company, the interviewers, that what you're capable of. Okay, so one of the best practices is in regards to communication, right? Now, this study here, it is related to communication in regards to feelings and attitudes, but I believe that when we're in an interview setting, a lot of emotions and feelings, and even obviously our attitudes, our actions, is quite relevant to the situation. So this is quite interesting. Obviously, what we say is crucially important, and it would be more than 7%, of relevance, if it's relevant or not. But what I want to share with this study here is that body language, facial, and tone of voice is just as crucial as to what you say, how you say it, right? And so you want to make sure that you are presenting your best version, right? And so that you obviously want to feel comfortable so that you can relay your message, but you want to do it in a way that it will convey well to the other end. And the importance of how we can send messages without saying a word. Well, Charlie Chaplin and Mr. Bean, they've made fame without even saying a word. So that's you can get a lot through your expressions in the tone of voice. Okay, so some of more best practices here. Smile. Smile is not just my opinion. It's not a preference. It's science. Okay, so there is a lot of data just stating how the power of smile, and that is not just within. Okay, it's not just how it helps me as a person to calm myself, to soothe my nervous system, to feel more confident, to feel more positive, but also those around me, right? And so it's important for us to be mindful and remember, as we've been building the concept of, interviewers are not my enemy. They are, humans. They're people, and so I want to be able to also share that positivity and that joy with them. Okay, well, here's a true fact. Smiling reduces blood pressure, lowers stress hormones, and boosts your mood. British study even found that one smile generates the same level of brain stimulation as up to 2,000 bars of chocolate. So, hey, if you're wanting to get a bar of chocolate, go and just start smiling, and you're going to feel really good about yourself. All right, be interested. Okay, so I've heard I've read the book from Chet Holmes. He says, if you want to be interesting, be interested. If you want to be fascinating, be fascinated. I think this is crucial as you are interviewing the interviewers and the company just as much as they're interviewing you. So you want to show that you really care. You want to show that you really want to get to know them on an individual level. And so just be mindful of that as you're trying to create a connection to have that. Is it okay to take a sheet of paper with you? It is certainly okay for you to take, a sheet of paper, sure. Perhaps maybe a notebook, so it just feels a little bit more, organized. But yeah, feel free to bring in a notebook so that you can, look at with the questions that you prepared in advance. Look in the eyes. This happens more often than not, where we get people who are looking all over the place, but not directly to, the people they're talking to, even if it's remotely, right? You want to make sure you're looking at the camera, or you're looking, to the screen. It's just, there's something about that of, where it builds connection, and there's data behind that as well, that, you actually connect with the person as you are looking them in the eyes, and you show confidence, and it's also helps you to maintain your focus. Be authentic, be you. Don't be someone that you're not. You want to make sure that you are being your true self, and that is so that the process can have a positive result, right? You don't want to present a version of yourself that you're not, and only later on to find frustration, and vice versa. The company will try to present, their true selves, and so just remind, you're awesome, you're great. Everyone has their value. Not every company is for every person, and so just by being yourself and presenting your best version, you'll be able to land the right job. If you get nervous, guess what? That is totally okay. All right. It's human nature to get nervous. And if, for whatever reason, you are not being able to calm yourself, first, there's a technique that I use it, and and it's backed by science. Is, if you're really nervous, make sure you have both of your feet on the floor, on the ground. Okay, that helps you to calm down as you're having, we have the expression of having your feet on the ground, right? So you want to make sure that you sit properly as well. That this posture calms our nervous system, and so that's one way that you can calm yourself. Now, if it's just out of control and you're too nervous, well, guess what? Don't try to hide it. I mean, this is my opinion. Don't hide it. Call it for what it is. So it's okay for you to share with the interview panel, hey, I'm so sorry, I'm a bit nervous, I don't know why, just and I apologize for that. Or, you don't even have to apologize, but I think it's okay, right? Because there's an elephant in the room, and everyone sees it, you feel it, and it's just me, right? And I've had situations where I've noticed the candidate was nervous, and I tried to help them calm down. And so by recognizing that, I think that helps. Okay. All right, and then no negativity. All right, so as previously we shared that it's not a therapy session. you know Talking bad about people or previous employer or current employer or whatever it is, that's just not appropriate, in my opinion, on an interview setting or even in any other setting, right? And so it's important for us to be mindful that we challenges everyone has, right? We have challenges with people, with companies, and the idea, we're here to overcome those challenges. But it's honestly, I don't think really brings any positive results for us to talk about negative about anyone or anything. All right, frequent asked questions. Tell us about yourself. So I'll just read through all of these real quick. I want to be mindful that we have a few minutes left for questions and answers. But yeah, so that's typically how, after you have an icebreaker or whatever, that's how companies usually start an interview with. You want to make sure that you have, a good pitch about you on the personal side that you feel comfortable sharing, also on a professional level. What I think the biggest challenge I see candidates having, and mistake that they make, is they dive in too deep, either on the personal or on the professional. And the initial conversation here, the initial question, is more of a high level overview, right? You're not supposed to get into projects or into details. It's more of just kind of tell your story, right? You're the author of your own story. So you want to make sure that you just tell, it's like a teaser. It's like, before you go watching the movie, you want to see the trailer to see if you're, interested or not. You just want something that will get them like, oh, okay, I really want to dive in more about this, right? You want to give them something that they're interested and curious, and they'll keep asking follow-up questions, right? So just be mindful. Usually 2 to 3 minutes is sufficient. If, again, the interviewer wants to ask more questions, they will do so. Know your why you want this position, why this company, why now. So that's important for you to prepare for those questions. What's the salary expectation? Well, I hear that next week we're going to have a training specifically about salary expectation. So I won't dive into that. But what I will say is know your number, right? It's important for you to know what you what you need and what's your value, right? Now, it's also important to know what the market competes with, right? So it's important for us to not just have a number that, oh, I just think that this is my number, but it's also important for you to know what the market value is, what's being applied. And so the way you do that, you can research online. There's a couple of data points where you can go to: LinkedIn, Glassdoor, again, great resources. And also asking your network, and the people that you are connected to, you can ask them, what's their knowledge about the market. Why the gap? Why a brief tenure? That's an important question that typically comes up with people who are coming back to the workforce, or if you there was a gap for whatever reason, right? Don't avoid that, right? If you can explain that on a resume, and when I say explain it, doesn't mean a paragraph or even 2 or 3 lines. It means maybe you can say time off because I was doing this or whatever, and that already might be sufficient that they won't even bring that up, right? But if there's a gap and you don't address it either in the resume or you don't, then most likely that will come up. And it's totally fine to say that you took a leave for whatever reason, but you just want to make sure that you have a good explanation of the situation using the CAR method. Okay, what does growth mean? So a lot of people, especially when they're saying, when we're asking about, why now, why this position, people say, oh, because I want to grow. Well, what does growth mean to you, right? So that's something that usually, can be a follow-up question when people mention the word growth, right? Because it feels like whenever people use the word growth, okay, I just put the word growth there and it solves a lot of problems, answers a lot of questions. But then, there might be a follow-up question there, okay, so what does that mean, right? Because growth can really mean different things for everyone. Okay. And obviously there are more frequent questions, but I think those are some of the main ones. Do you have, okay, so when the interviewer or the recruiter hiring manager, they ask you, if you have any questions. So I'm going to give you guys a few interviewer related questions. So one of them that you can ask is, remember, it's for you to be interesting, you have to be interested, right? So here are some questions. How have you grown with the company? What do you enjoy most about the company? What gets you most excited about the company's future? How was the company changed since you joined? Okay, so these are some practical examples that will help you feel like, the other side will feel like, okay, they really are interested in me, and also they have a broader vision of trying to capture, what the company is all about. What are the main challenges of this role? Okay, that's another great question. What do most successful people here do differently than everyone else? Ask questions about topics that we're discussing in the interview. Those are information that you get during the interview, and then you might just want to do some follow-ups. That really shows that you were there, you were involved in paying attention. And is there anything else I can provide? Okay, so I think that is it. Trina, I don't know if there are any questions on the chat.
There are. Yes, thank you so much. I'm like, there's so many great little questions. I know that's always been a hard one on what are the questions I ask back at the end, and you should always ask questions.
Definitely.
I've even had feedback from companies that have interviewed some of our tech moms and said they walked away feeling like they were disinterested. You don't want to be the individual that comes in and is like, oh, I'm just here, right? No, you're really interested. And I like that you talked about what are the challenges that you're currently facing within this role. And then you could hear that and then respond, well, here's how I can help address that. What value am I going to bring back? So I think that's a really great advice there.
So Sam, I'd love to hear if you do have, are there any questions that you would recommend people not ask at the end of an interview? Are there red flag questions that we should not ask as interviewees?
Yes, definitely. First of all, when the questions are always more focused on me than anything else. So what kind of questions are those? Like benefits, salary, and even though those are important questions to be asked, but not the right time. And so a lot of times you can even get those a lot of those information on the website, or it's just at the right time. If that comes, you'll be provided with the right information, right? And so if I think the right concept here to share, at least in my opinion, is questions that are not focused on you. If you are asking questions that are more, then what we get on, what the company gets on the other side is like, oh, they're more concerned about themselves than the team and the company and growing, and so I think questions like that you should avoid it initially.
I think that even taking it, because this was something as I was hiring at Oracle, and my leadership team and I would get together, we would have conversations about if we got all the way through an interview cycle and then they asked about the pay range and it wasn't a fit, would be frustrating for everybody because it's time that you're taking from yourself and from the team to go through an interview cycle where it's not a great salary fit. So I would even say, ask that question before you even schedule the interview on what the pay range is. Because you don't want to go into something where it's like, it's not going to be a fit, it's too low, or this just isn't. I would ask the recruiter prior to scheduling, what is the pay range? You don't have to come with the set, here's what it is, like set salary, but what's the range I can be looking at to make sure I'm, aligned. Would you agree?
Trina, so yes, but I think there's also an opportunity to be it really depends, and I think it depends on the individual level, your experience and everything. But let's say that you bring that up right in the beginning of the interactions with the company, and let's say that the range is lower than than what you're expecting, right?
Mhm.
You might cut yourself from the process without giving the company the opportunity to get to know you more, and perhaps they may be able to find within the budget that they can compete a little bit more to get you, right? And so what I would just say that, there is, you definitely want to be mindful of everyone's time. And so yes, if it's the company's way off or you're way off or whatever it is, right, then you can save everyone's time. But sometimes bringing those questions right in the beginning, that can, you might remove yourself when maybe perhaps there's still an opportunity, or or a different role, right? Let's say that the company, as they interview you, and they're like, oh, okay, wait, maybe this person is more senior, so maybe, oh, we actually have this opportunity that could be a better fit. So
Yeah, I think it depends on the role and what you're looking for, but
right,
you know, it can be very time consuming doing a lot of interviews.
correct,
You really want to make sure
correct,
you're targeting the right roles. And if you want to
correct.
work for that company, maybe it is go for that and do the interviews, but really understanding, that's why I say a range is good to understand. Are we even close, right?
Yeah.
So I think there was two more questions and then we'll wrap it up because I know we're at the end of our time. Is it expected to bring a copy of your resume in person for an in-person interview?
This will be my total opinion, and I would say no, because I want to save trees. And
Okay.
so we're in the digital world.
Yeah.
And so I wouldn't expect from anyone. So, but again, that's just my opinion. Someone might be
Maybe,
really upset that, oh, you didn't bring your resume. So
yeah. To have your digital copy ready to email right away,
sure,
right?
correct.
Something like that. Okay. And then the last one is it okay to take notes during an interview?
Most definitely. But there's an amount of how much you do that and how much you're focused and writing the note and still paying attention, looking at the people in the room, right? And so, and even letting them know, right? If you're remote and you're typing a lot, if you don't let them know beforehand, they might think, oh, okay, they're chatting, like they're not interested, right?
Yeah.
And so, and you also want to be discreet, right? And so if it's in person, yes, you're more than welcome to take notes. Just make sure that you are concise in your notes, so that you can still pay attention to, if they ask you a question and then you're focused on your note, then you just might show like, oh,
Yeah.
you're not. So just
Very
be
good.
aware with that. Yeah.
Very good. This has been wonderful. And I can tell from the chat and everything else, everybody's really soaking all this up. So thank you so much for your time today.
No, thank you guys.
Great
It was a
amount of
pleasure.
information here. I'm sure everybody's going to be going back through it. So I'm glad we've got this recorded. We'll get this out on our YouTube channel and make sure everybody has access to it. Thank you so much, Sam.
All
And
right. Thanks, everyone.
everybody have a fabulous day.
All right. Bye.
Thank you.
Ciao.
Trina, if you want to go ahead and just save this to the cloud and then I can take care of it from there.
Okay. I think I saved the local and we'll go.
Oh, however you did it, it'll be great.